Welcome, fellow deep divers, to another journey into the stories that, well, shape our world. You've just heard a fantastic introduction to a truly remarkable narrative. And now we're taking you on an immersive exploration, really getting into the life of Amir Abbas Fakhravar. This is a story that travels, through the stark realities of Iranian prisons. It navigates the complex corridors of power in Washington, D.C., and ultimately it seeks to redefine the future of an entire nation. We've gathered, well, quite a stack of his books poured over his YouTube channel. He's very prolific there, and scrolled through countless posts on his Instagram page. Our goal isn't just to give you his biography, but a genuine deep dive into the ideas, the controversies, and the unwavering conviction that really defines him. Our mission today: let's unpack this incredible journey, extracting those crucial nuggets of knowledge and insight from his multifaceted life.
Absolutely. And this deep dive, it really offers a unique lens, a way to understand the intricate layers of political struggle, of dissent within Iran, and how all that reverberates across the broader geopolitical landscape. What's truly insightful here, I think, is how one individual's personal odyssey can illuminate so many systemic aspects. Things like authoritarianism, resistance, and the complex dynamics of exile politics. So we're here to be your guides, navigating Fakhravar's compelling narrative, his often, let's be frank, controversial claims, and the intense debates that swirl around him. Our goal is simply to present his story and the context around it, as he shares it from his earliest acts of defiance right up to his ongoing advocacy. We want to empower you, the listener, to form your own well-informed understanding. We're not taking sides here in the political fray. It's about dissecting a critical voice, a significant voice, in the Iranian opposition.
Exactly. Think of this as your shortcut, maybe, to understanding a figure who has, without a doubt, made some significant waves. He's challenged established narratives, proposed bold alternatives. So let's begin this compelling story. Let's dive in. Part 1. The foundations of a dissident Fakhravar's early life and awakening. Okay, so to really grasp Fakhravar's trajectory, we need to rewind, go back to his formative years. Amir Abbas Fakhravar was born July 6, 1975, in Tehran. His family, well, it had deep roots in Iran's pre-revolutionary history. His father, Hamid Bagher Fakhravar, was an Air Force officer. His mother, Pravana Perdehan. Now, he frequently describes his family as profoundly patriotic, imbued with this powerful, almost defiant connection to the legacy of Reza Shah Pahlavi, the founder of modern Iran, right? It's a connection Fakhravar wears almost like a badge of honor. He repeatedly asserts, Reza Shah's blood runs in my veins. And this isn't just sentimentality, no. It's a direct rhetorical weapon against the current regime. You see it on his Instagram often with defiant messages like, "You Mullah destroyed Reza Shah, but his soul is alive." So his childhood, spent between Tehran and Shiraz, was clearly steeped in this powerful family narrative. And that undoubtedly served as a foundational stage for his ideological opposition later on.
Right. And placing this in that broader historical context is key. Fakhravar's embrace of Reza Shah's legacy isn't just nostalgia. It's really a strategic ideological stance. Reza Shah, who ruled from, 1925 to 1941, he represented this forceful drive towards secularism, modernization, a strong, centralized Iranian nationalism. These are principles that stand in stark ideological contrast to the Islamic Republic's theocratic governance. It's a direct clash. So for Fakhravar, proclaiming that Reza Shah's blood runs in his veins, it's a direct challenge to the regime's legitimacy. Full stop. It positions him as an heir to an alternative, potent foundational myth for Iran, you see, directly undermining the ruling ideology by tapping into this deeply resonant pre-revolutionary identity. It just highlights how historical narratives aren't just in textbooks. They actively shape personal identities, cultivate political stances from a young age, and, well, they can be weaponized in these ongoing struggles for national identity.
And it really didn't take long for these inherent sparks of resistance to ignite. Fakhravar was clearly bright, intellectually driven, excelled in mathematics and physics, graduated from the Shiraz School of Thought. But his first documented act of dissent came incredibly early, just 16 years old. He was serving as a student representative at an educational council meeting. He bravely spoke out, directly criticizing the authorities. The consequences, immediate, severe. His first taste of imprisonment, solitary confinement for this ambiguous charge of insulting the authorities. He recalls this formative experience vividly in his book, This Place Is Not a Ditch. He writes quite powerfully, the mullahs were even afraid of a teenager who read mathematics because they knew their calculus was wrong. That's such a poignant line, isn't it? It really highlights the regime's deep insecurity.
Oh, absolutely. And that early act of defiance is incredibly significant. It just illustrates the Islamic Republic's low tolerance, even for nascent criticism. I mean, even a seemingly minor expression of dissent from a high school student met with disproportionate brutal repression, solitary confinement right away. Fakhravar himself, He characterizes the regime as the communist monster with the turban. That's his term, an epithet that really encapsulates his view of their authoritarian, totalitarian nature, blended with religious fundamentalism. And that quote about the mullahs fearing a math student whose calculus was wrong, it masterfully uses irony, doesn't it, to underscore the regime's fear of rational thought, of independent intellect. It signifies their recognition that critical thinking poses a fundamental threat to their whole ideological edifice. So this early severe experience, it undoubtedly forged a deep-seated opposition that would define his life. And after this, his path continued to be, well, constrained. He went to the University of Medical Sciences in '92, but was expelled in '97. Then he had to serve in the Army. These aren't just coincidences. The regime systematically uses control over education, over mandatory military service, as powerful tools to channel, surveil, and suppress potential opposition, limiting the pathways for dissidents.
Yeah, it's clear they wanted to contain him, right? To channel that rebellious energy somewhere manageable. But even under those pressures, he found a way. Found a way to articulate his dissent. His first book, The Greenest Eyes on Earth, published in the winter of 1997. Now, outwardly, it was framed as a romantic novel. But Fakhravar insists it was deeply laced with political irony. And here's where it gets really compelling. The regime, according to him, was furious. They saw right through the romantic veneer, understanding that these green eyes were a symbol of protest.
And this particular detail, it just illuminates the ingenuity and the risks inherent in covert protests under authoritarian regimes. It's fascinating. When direct criticism is suppressed, artists, writers, they often resort to subtle messaging, allegory, symbolism. You see it time and again. Fakhravar's choice to embed political irony within a romantic narrative really highlights this strategic use of art. Those green eyes, while ostensibly romantic, could be readily interpreted within the Iranian context as a potent symbol. Hope, maybe renewal, or even implicitly, a connection to the later Green Movement. The regime's reported anger, well, that just confirms their constant vigilance against any perceived challenge to their authority. It shows how even seemingly innocuous cultural expressions can be read as powerful political statements. It's really a testament to the power of subtle messaging to bypass censorship and resonate with a populace eager for these coded expressions of dissent.
Part 2. The Crucible of Evan student protests and white torture. So those early acts of defiance, powerful as they were really just a prelude. We now turn to 1999. A year that would shake Iran with widespread student protests and really cement Fakhravar's role as a prominent voice of dissent. These July student protests were a pivotal moment in modern Iranian history, no doubt about it. And Fakhravar, he played a key leadership role. In his book, There Is No Hole Here, he vividly recounts the intensity of those days. He says, "We students wanted freedom, but the mullahs responded with batons and bullets." And the sources, they detail numerous arrests, widespread torture during this incredibly brutal period.
Yes, the 1999 student protests were absolutely a watershed moment. They emerged from this widespread disillusionment, mainly with the reformist government of President Mohammad Khatami. His promises of greater freedoms, they largely failed to materialize, right? Under the shadow of the hardline establishment. So these protests were a direct, furious confrontation, primarily driven by Iranian youth, challenging the entire reformist facade and unequivocally revealing the regime's brutal, repressive true nature. Fakhravar's leadership role during these events, it positions him right at the very heart of this youth rebellion. It connects his personal narrative of defiance to a broader collective movement for change. It was a time when many hopes for internal systemic reform were just brutally dashed, solidifying the idea for many that the regime was fundamentally unreformable.
And it wasn't just on the streets where Fakhravar fought. He also used the power of the written word, challenging the regime. He contributed a regular column titled, "Who Knows Better Than the People?" This was in prominent reformist newspapers in the time, like Khordad and Masharakat. Through this column, he exposed specific instances of corruption, abuses of power by the authorities. It's particularly noted that with the assistance of Abbas Abdi, who's a prominent figure himself, complex history, former radical student turned reformist, this column apparently drove the regime crazy.
Right, and this really illustrates the incredibly precarious, limited space that existed for reformist media in Iran during those brief periods, and the constant, intense tension it generated with the hardline factions. Fakhravar's column wasn't just critical reporting. It became a direct public challenge to what he termed the red and black reaction. His specific ideological framing, remember. That oppressive blend of communism and Islamism he believed defined the regime. The fact that it drove the regime crazy, well, that's a crucial insight into the profound insecurity of those in power. It indicates that exposing corruption, especially through popular media, struck right at the heart of their perceived legitimacy and control. This period just highlights the intricate life cycle of protest movements, where both direct street action and media challenges play critical, often interconnected roles. And it underscores the immense risks taken by those who lead them, those who put their names out there.
Unsurprisingly then, given his outspokenness, this path led directly to further imprisonment. November 2002, Fakhravar gets sentenced to a lengthy 8-year prison term. Notably, for insulting his book, There Is No Hole Here, which immediately begs the question, right, what does that even mean for someone fighting for their voice? Insulting your own book. Recognizing the profound injustice, Amnesty International officially designated him as a prisoner of conscience.
Yes, and that amnesty designation is absolutely crucial here. It signifies that Fakhravar was imprisoned solely for the peaceful exercise of his human rights. In this case, freedom of expression through his writing. It underscores the severe, systematic consequences for free speech in Iran, where critical writing, challenging narratives are twisted into criminal acts. The very concept of insulting a book being a crime reveals the authoritarian state's deep, almost paranoid fear of ideas and their potential to mobilize people. Such classifications from reputable international human rights organizations like Amnesty, they highlight the systematic nature of dissent suppression. And they force an important question, don't they, about the legal frameworks these authoritarian states use. They often manipulate or invent laws to silence opposition, control public discourse, basically perverting justice to serve political ends, criminalizing thought itself.
But his ordeal didn't stop there. It actually escalated to something even more insidious. January 2004, Fakhravar gets transferred to Ward 325 of Evin Prison. This is where he experienced a form of torment known as white torture. He himself explains this horror on YouTube in chilling detail. It's truly harrowing to imagine, he says. A cell without windows, everything is white, walls, clothes, food, white rice on a white plate. If you wanted to go to the bathroom, you would put a white paper under the door. The guards came in silent shoes, no talking, just complete sensory deprivation.
Exactly. And this vivid description, it just unveils the regime's calculated cruelty. White torture is not about physical pain. It's a terrifying psychological weapon, precisely engineered to strip an individual of their identity, their sensory input, their sense of reality. By eliminating all external stimuli, color, sound, even distinct visual cues, it disorients the prisoner's mind. It blurs the line between reality and hallucination. The aim is to profoundly erode their sense of self, often causing deeper, more lasting psychological damage than physical abuse, crucially, without leaving visible marks. Amnesty International recognized this as the first documented case of white torture in Iran, highlighting its unique and insidious nature. Yet Fakhravar's powerful rebuttal to this dehumanizing process is equally striking, isn't it? The mullahs thought they were whitening my soul by whitening the cell, but my soul remained green, the green of Iran. End quote. That speaks to an extraordinary resilience of the human spirit, facing extreme isolation and psychological manipulation. It shows how a deeply ingrained sense of identity, of purpose, can resist even the most systematic attempts at psychological obliteration.
And the brutality, it just continued. Even during brief reprieves. February 2004, he gets granted a short 2-day leave. But upon his forced return, he's immediately rearrested. And his leg was brutally broken right there in the courthouse. This isn't just a physical assault, it's a chilling message, right? What does this reveal about the regime's control and its tactics?
It reveals absolute contempt for judicial process, for basic human dignity. That tactic of granting short-term releases, only to rearrest or apply further pressure upon return. It's a common strategy in authoritarian states. It's often used to extract information, to torment dissidents psychologically, giving them a fleeting taste of freedom, or to leverage their families as a means of control. And the regime's fear, it truly extended beyond Fakhravar himself. Remember, his sister and brother-in-law were also arrested in June 2003 simply for speaking to reporters. Fakhravar captures this in an Instagram post, writing, "The regime is even afraid of the family because it knows its foundations are shaking." Placing this in a broader context, it just underscores how authoritarian states extend their control, their intimidation, far beyond the individual, projecting it onto their entire social network, punishing loved ones to silence critics and instill widespread fear. Collective punishment, essentially.
And then came this truly pivotal, life-altering moment. After a 19-day Nowruz leave in March 2004, Fakhravar made the agonizing decision in July 2005 not to return from his temporary leave. The consequences. Immediate and extreme. The regime issued a shoot-to-kill order against him. He later confirmed the terrifying reality of this in an interview with Radio Freedom Europe. His sister reportedly corroborated the order, stating that the forces were allowed to shoot. He went deep into hiding after that.
That decision, it just epitomizes the harrowing choices faced by dissidents. It really raises that important question. What pushes someone to make such a desperate life-or-death choice? It reflects immense pressure, a complete breakdown of any remaining trust in the legal system, and the extreme risks involved in defying an authoritarian state's direct order. Fakhravar's refusal to return signaled a complete, irreversible break. Any possibility of legal or judicial recourse within Iran was gone. It propelled him onto this dangerous path of clandestine survival. It just underscores the immense personal sacrifices made in the struggle for freedom, forcing individuals into a perpetual state of vigilance, isolation, all for the sake of their convictions.
Part 3. From Evan to Exile, a New Front in the U.S. So, okay, he's gone into hiding. There's a shoot-to-kill order out for him. How on earth do you escape an entire regime that wants you dead? Fakhravar's story continues with what he describes as an epic escape in 2006. He explains that with the meticulous help of friends, they managed to bribe airport officials so his name wouldn't appear on any no-fly lists. A detail that, according to the sources, was corroborated by a WikiLeaks cable, which adds a layer of, well, intrigue. His perilous journey took him from Tehran to Dubai, and then finally, across continents to the United States. He recounts this incredibly dangerous journey in his book, Still the Scraps of Prison, writing really powerfully, "The mullahs thought they had caught me, but I went through the fire like Siavash."
Yeah, that's a truly remarkable account. It vividly illustrates the elaborate, incredibly dangerous nature of these clandestine escapes from a highly surveilled state. Such operations often involve extensive networks of trusted support, significant financial risk, and an almost inconceivable level of bravery and resourcefulness. And that reference to Siavash is particularly potent, isn't it? Deeply rooted in Persian culture. Siavash, a legendary Persian hero from the Shahnameh, the Book of Kings, famously passes through a trial by fire unscathed. It symbolizes his purity, innocence, resilience against false accusations. So what's fascinating here is that deliberate blend. Practical clandestine operations mixed with profound cultural symbolism, which resonates deeply within Iranian culture. It frames his escape not just as a survival story, but as this heroic, almost mythical act of triumph against overwhelming unjust power, connecting his personal ordeal to a long tradition of heroes facing impossible challenges.
And then, once he arrived in the U.S., his integration into these incredibly influential circles was remarkably swift. High-level access, almost immediately. This is where it gets particularly fascinating. Almost right away, he's invited to a luncheon with prominent figures like Richard Perle and Michael Ledeen at the American Enterprise Institute, both highly influential voices in conservative foreign policy circles, right? He was even given an office at the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, a well-known Washington, D.C. think tank specializing in national security. The sources note he met with officials at the Pentagon, the State Department, Vice President Dick Cheney, and even President George W. Bush. In a YouTube video, Fakhravar actually states, "I told Bush that the Malay's regime is dead, it just needs pressure." That's an astonishing level of access, virtually right off the plane.
It really is striking, that rapid integration into influential U.S. conservative and foreign policy circles, and it offers a crucial insight into U.S. strategic interests at the time. It highlights how U.S. policymakers actively seek out and support Iranian dissidents who align with specific foreign policy objectives, particularly those advocating for robust pressure and regime change in Iran. The American Enterprise Institute, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, both prominent neoconservative think tanks, historically advocating for a more assertive U.S. foreign policy, especially in the Middle East. Fakhravar's direct message to President Bush that the regime is dead and merely needs pressure clearly resonated with those seeking to escalate pressure on Iran. They perhaps saw in him a credible voice to support that agenda. This swift access to top U.S. officials illustrates a significant strategic alignment and a keen understanding by U.S. policymakers of how to leverage dissident voices, not just to inform their strategies, but also to influence public opinion and build a coalition for their policy goals.
And his influence wasn't just limited to private meetings. July 2006, he testifies before the powerful Senate Homeland Security Committee. There, he openly advocated for regime change in Iran, declaring definitively that the reform movement is dead. No more mincing words. The sources also mention that during this period, he requested $3 million in funding, though the exact amount he might have received or for what specific purposes remains largely unknown.
Right, and that testimony marks a pivotal, very public shift in Fakhravar's strategy, moving from advocating for reform within the Iranian system to explicitly calling for outright regime change from the outside. This hardline stance, it has profound implications, not only for U.S. policy toward Iran, but also for the broader Iranian opposition, which is historically fractured, right, over whether to pursue internal reform, revolution, or external intervention. And it raises that important question about the effectiveness and the ethical considerations of foreign funding for opposition movements. While such funding can empower dissidents, it can also open them up to accusations of being foreign agents, potentially undermining their credibility within Iran. It's a complex, often ethically fraught dance between supporting democratic aspirations and navigating the intricate complexities of international relations, sovereignty, and the unintended consequences of external support.
His engagement didn't stop with the U.S. either. He also actively reached out to Israel, a move that is inherently extremely controversial for any Iranian dissident, given the intense animosity between the two nations. Initially, in 2011, the Israeli Foreign Ministry actually denied him a visa, reportedly due to concerns from Richard Horowitz, a prominent Israeli official. However, he successfully visited in January 2012, met with members of parliament, including Tzipi Livni, a very prominent Israeli politician, former foreign minister.
Yeah, the decision for an Iranian dissident to engage directly with Israeli officials is, without question, a highly controversial, high-stakes maneuver, especially given those intense geopolitical tensions and historical antagonism. This interaction highlights the complex, often pragmatic motivations at play for all parties involved. For Fakhravar, it could be a strategic move, leveraging any platform, forging powerful alliances against a shared enemy, regardless of the potential backlash from other segments of the Iranian diaspora. For Israeli officials, such an engagement could be an opportunity. Gather intelligence, build a network of potential allies, or simply send a strong political signal to Tehran. One potent observation here is just how Fakhravar positions himself on the global stage, showing a willingness to challenge conventional geopolitical taboos to amplify his message and exert influence. His subsequent speech at the influential Herzliya conference, where he directly posed that critical question, do the sanctions work, connects his personal advocacy to broader ongoing debates about the efficacy of international sanctions as a tool of foreign policy, particularly concerning Iran. Placing this in the bigger picture, it reflects a continuous, deeply divided debate in policy circles about how best to influence regimes like the Islamic Republic, whether it's through sustained pressure, diplomatic dialogue, or outright regime change. It's a vivid demonstration of the global chessboard of international politics and the potent, sometimes polarizing role individual voices can play.
Part 4. Unveiling the Ayatollah's Comrade, a controversial narrative. Okay, now we arrive at what is arguably Fakhravar's most significant and probably most profoundly controversial intellectual contribution. His key book, The Ayatollah's Comrade, or Comrade Ayatollah, a massive 700-page work published in 2016. Let's unpack this monumental and, frankly, audacious claim because it's nothing short of a geopolitical bombshell.
It really is. The book's central claim, highly controversial indeed, is that Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, is in fact a long-term KGB agent trained by the Soviets. And even more explosively, that the Islamic Revolution itself was significantly influenced by the KGB to bring Khomeini to power. This assertion fundamentally attempts to rewrite the entire narrative of the Islamic Revolution, challenging decades of established understanding, official history, the very ideological foundations of the Islamic Republic. What's truly striking here is the sheer boldness of this revisionist history, how it fundamentally challenges established understanding, suggesting a completely different, darker underlying truth to one of the most pivotal events in recent Middle Eastern history. I mean, if such a claim were ever proven, it would not only profoundly alter perceptions of the regime's origins and legitimacy, but it would also implicate the very foundation of its clerical rule as a foreign orchestrated plot, rather than an indigenous Islamic movement. The implications are just huge.
And Fakhravar claims he painstakingly used a wide range of highly sensitive sources for this explosive thesis, including, he says, documents from the KGB, CIA, Mossad, and Iranian intelligence, though he makes a point of specifying that he did not rely on documents from the Iranian opposition. He unequivocally states in the book, the Islamic Revolution was the role of the KGB in bringing a Khomeini to power. Khamenei is a friend of the Soviets. It's incredibly direct.
Well, the immediate challenge, of course, lies in verifying such sweeping claims without direct, independent access to the alleged documents.
Right.
This prompts us to consider that important question about the role of declassified intelligence, or leaked information, in shaping political discourse. How much weight can you give such claims when the foundational evidence remains largely undisclosed or difficult to corroborate? When dealing with claims of secret intelligence operations, the difficulty isn't just physical access to documents, but their inherent opacity. Such materials are often fragmented, highly contextual, subject to multiple interpretations, or even deliberate disinformation campaigns. It's murky territory. This makes independent corroboration exceptionally difficult, contributing to the enduring controversy around such revisionist histories. However, the strategic implications of linking the Islamic Republic to Soviet intelligence are profound. especially for a Western audience historically wary of foreign interference and communist influence. If widely believed, such a narrative could profoundly destabilize the regime's legitimacy from within, painting its foundational event and current leadership as a foreign-controlled operation, rather than a genuine popular uprising. It really speaks to the potent psychological warfare aspect of information in political struggles, where ideas, even highly controversial ones, can spark movements and erode trust. And despite the evidentiary challenges, the book apparently became an underground bestseller in Iran and a catalyst for the constitutional revolution, which speaks volumes about its powerful impact and resonance among a populace disillusioned with official narratives.
And Fakhravar isn't just writing books. He's actively disseminating these ideas, these arguments, through digital activism. On his YouTube channel, which is quite vibrant, he has a series of videos meticulously explaining these details, framing them humorously but pointedly, like Khomeini's gift to humanity, no, the KGB's gift to the mullahs. And he directly mocks the current leader, Khamenei, boldly asserting Khamenei thinks he is the leader, but Putin's puppet. He also extensively uses Instagram, posting with the viral hashtag Ayush, which translates to Comrade Ayatollah, again, directly mocking the regime. One particularly pointed example, which also highlights his political alignment, is Qasem Soleimani became Qasem Kettle, thank you to Trump. He further expresses overt support for former President Trump, cited things like, Trump gives the highest medal to Rudy Giuliani, who talked to me about communist sequel, connecting himself to those circles.
Yeah, this broad digital presence demonstrates the evolving tactics of dissidents in the digital age, doesn't it? Analyzing the effectiveness of satire and humor in political messaging, especially online, reveals how Fakhravar effectively connects with a wider, often younger audience, and cleverly undermines powerful figures. The Qasem Kettle comment, for instance, that's a potent play on words. It both trivializes and insults a significant military figure like Qasem Soleimani, directly challenging the regime's attempts to mythologize its heroes. His conspicuous alignment with specific U.S. political figures, particularly former President Trump and Rudy Giuliani, carries significant implications for his standing within the broader, often diverse and fragmented Iranian opposition. And this raises that important question again about the pragmatic choices dissidents make in a complex geopolitical landscape. They often seek alliances where they perceive the most effective support for their overarching goal, regime change, even if those alliances are polarizing or controversial among different factions of the diaspora. Social media, in this context, becomes a powerful battleground for rapid message dissemination, cultivating a specific brand of political identity, and forming often unexpected international alliances.
Part 5. Forging a New Path, the Iranian National Congress and Constitutional Vision. So moving beyond just critique and exposing what he sees as historical truths, Fakhravar has also actively worked to forge a new, tangible path for Iran's future. In 2013, he took a significant step. He founded the National Iranian Congress, or NIC. Crucially, the NIC's mission included proposing a comprehensive Western-modeled draft constitution for a post-theocratic Iran, a blueprint.
Exactly. And the establishment of a parallel political structure like the NIC, complete with a detailed alternative constitution, that's a highly significant move. Beyond mere opposition or historical revisionism, it signifies a strategic shift from pure criticism to active proposal, attempting to lay the concrete groundwork for a post-regime Iran. This vision aspires to establish a democratic, rule-of-law-based system, a stark, deliberate contrast to the current theocratic structure, and, importantly, any potential return to monarchical rule. What's fascinating here is the practical effort to create a blueprint for future governance, demonstrating that the movement isn't solely about what they are against, but critically what they are for. It's a strategic effort to offer a tangible institutional alternative to both the current regime and other forms of opposition, like the monarchists, who might advocate for a different political structure.
He further elaborated on this constitutional vision in his more recent 2024 book, The Spirit of the Constitution. In it, he explains his core belief, contrasting it sharply with other leadership models. He asserts, individual rule, Khamenei or the crown prince, means a lucky egg, but the rule of law is clear. That lucky egg analogy is incredibly striking, isn't it? Loaded with meaning.
It really is. That statement powerfully articulates Fakhravar's fundamental rejection of both the current supreme leader's authoritarian rule and any potential monarchist alternatives, which often carry their own connotations of arbitrary power. His philosophical underpinning emphasizes that crucial distinction between arbitrary individual rule, which he dismisses as a lucky egg, implying unpredictable, capricious, unaccountable leadership based on birthright or charismatic authority, and the predictability, transparency, and equity that a robust rule of law provides. This brings to the forefront an important question, right? What are the different visions for a future Iran, and how do they contend with each other for legitimacy and popular support? Fakhravar's emphasis on the rule of law highlights his unwavering commitment to a system where institutions, not individuals, hold ultimate authority, making it a critical point in the ideological battle shaping potential future leadership. It speaks to a desire for a stable, predictable, fundamentally just system, rooted in established legal principles rather than the whims of a single ruler.
And beyond his books and the organizational work of the NIC, Fakhravar maintains a very visible, very proactive public presence. His YouTube playlist of proud speeches features notable events like unveiling the Constitution in the British Parliament and anticipating Israel's attack on the regime. He's not shy. He's also incredibly active on Instagram, with recent posts stating things like the exact timing of Israel's attack on Khamenei tonight, or emphatically proclaiming that leftists and Islamists united against America. Very provocative stuff.
It demonstrates a multi-pronged strategy, doesn't it? Using prominent international platforms and high-reach social media to disseminate his messages and actively build public awareness for his cause. His willingness to make public, often specific, predictions about geopolitical events, like an imminent Israeli attack, that's a high-stakes move. Designed not only to capture immediate attention, but also to position himself as an informed insider on critical global events, potentially influencing both international and domestic perceptions. Placing this in broader context, it shows Fakhravar's proactive, assertive stance in attempting to shape narratives and influence opinions, leveraging his platform to comment on and predict major geopolitical shifts. Furthermore, his recognition with the Annie Taylor Award for Journalism and his established role as a lecturer in constitutional law at the Institute for Global Policy, IWP, that Washington, D.C.-based think tank known for its focus on national security and foreign policy, further underscore the academic and professional credibility Fakhravar has meticulously sought to establish in exile. It adds significant weight to his public pronouncements and his constitutional project.
And he consistently connects his long-term constitutional project to current events, most notably stating on Newsmax back in 2022 that the widespread protests following Mahsa Amini's tragic death were actually the constitutional revolution led by Mahsa Amini, framing it within his movement. He also continues his pointed mockery of the regime, noting things like, mullahs are cutting off the internet, killing protesters, destroying bodies, but the spirit of protest is alive.
Right. And what's truly insightful here is how Fakhravar masterfully frames contemporary protests within his larger constitutional revolution framework. He's incredibly adept at that. He's seeking to provide a unifying, aspirational vision for the diverse, often disparate protest movements within Iran, actively linking ongoing dissent to his long-term constitutional project by connecting these immediate, visceral acts of defiance and suffering to a broader, more organized constitutional struggle. He attempts to give them a cohesive political direction and purpose, aiming to channel the raw energy of current events into his overarching vision for Iran's future. His declaration that the spirit of protest is alive, even amidst brutal repression, underscores the resilience, the adaptability of dissent, positioning the constitutional revolution as this ongoing, evolving movement that harnesses the power of popular discontent. It's a powerful example of the ability to connect current events to a larger aspirational political framework, inspiring both hope and, crucially, a concrete direction for change.
Part 6. Echoes of dissent, criticisms, and Fakhravar's defense. Now, it's absolutely crucial we acknowledge this. Amir Abbas Fakhravar's journey, his various claims, they're not without significant controversy. The source material explicitly mentions controversy surrounding him. That indicates a deeply contested public image. So what does this mean for his standing among a highly fragmented Iranian diaspora? Some exiled Iranians, for instance, openly state that he has no credibility, is a spy for the regime, or his story of his escape is exaggerated. These are serious accusations.
They are. And this highlights the often intensely contentious, deeply fragmented nature of exiled opposition movements, where internal rivalries, suspicions, even baseless accusations are regrettably common. The stakes are incredibly high for these movements, right? And skepticism, as well as outright mistrust, often runs deep. Such criticisms, whether they're founded or not, can certainly undermine a figure's influence, their ability to unify broader opposition efforts. It creates a complex, often hostile environment where trust is scarce and motives are constantly questioned. The accusation of being a spy for the regime in particular, that's a potent, deeply damaging weapon commonly deployed within these circles to discredit opponents. It's almost a standard tactic, unfortunately.
And there are also more specific examples that challenge his credibility directly. Laura Rosen, a noted journalist, for instance, publicly questioned the legitimacy of his Paulo Coelho Award, implying doubts about its authenticity or the circumstances surrounding it. And a blunt quote from Mother Jones magazine directly casts doubt on the practicalities of his escape narrative, stating simply, "No one runs away from Evan, takes a furlough." Quote. These aren't just vague accusations. They directly target key elements of his self-narrative, his story.
Exactly. These specific criticisms really cut to the heart of the challenges of discerning truth and credibility in such a highly politicized, high-stakes environment. The skepticism surrounding the Paulo Coelho Award, and particularly that Mother Jones quote, directly targets the logistical feasibility of his dramatic escape from one of the world's most notorious prisons while supposedly on furlough. He raises eyebrows. Such detailed challenges prompt that important question about the verification of personal narratives in political contexts, especially when those narratives are used to build public profiles and influence policy. When evidence isn't universally accessible for independent verification, or when accounts are challenged by reputable sources, the burdens of proof and the pervasive questions of authenticity become even more pronounced. It underscores the difficulty for external observers, like us or you the listener, to definitively confirm or deny such claims, leaving much open to interpretation and debate.
Fakhravar, for his part, hasn't shied away from these intense criticisms. Not at all. He offers a direct, unwavering rebuttal to his detractors, stating, "The regime's enemies are trying to defame me, but the documents are talking." He consistently relies on the existence of these documents as his ultimate proof. That's his defense.
And what's truly compelling there is his steadfast defense, right? Consistently relying on the existence of unrevealed or perhaps selectively revealed documents as his ultimate proof. This stance, while a direct rebuttal, also inherently perpetuates the ongoing debate about transparency and verifiable evidence. He frames the criticism he receives not as legitimate questions, but as a concerted effort by adversaries, implying that those who question him are either agents of the regime or unwitting tools in a broader defamation campaign. This makes it incredibly difficult for an outside observer to conclusively prove or disprove his claims when the documents he refers to aren't publicly accessible for independent scrutiny. It highlights a recurring challenge in political struggles, the intense battle over narrative, evidence, and public perception, where assertions can be powerful even without universal corroboration.
And he continues to navigate this complex, often hostile, exiled opposition landscape through platforms like X, formerly Twitter. He frequently posts insightful, often provocative thoughts such as, "Reformists put us between bad crown prince and worse supreme leader, but the third option is the rule of law." Clearly positioning himself, he also speaks of partisans, whom he describes as patriotic Iranians who fight without orders. Interesting concept.
Yes, these posts clearly illustrate Fakhravar's strategic positioning, not just against the current theocratic regime, but also pointedly against the monarchist opposition, which often advocates for a return to a Pahlavi dynasty. He consistently emphasizes a distinct third constitutional path, presenting it as the only truly viable and democratic option for Iran's future, explicitly rejecting both the existing authoritarianism and any form of inherited rule. His concept of partisans as independent actors committed to his cause is also highly significant. It suggests this decentralized, organic movement of patriotic individuals, distinct from traditional political parties or formal military structures. Placing this in the broader context, it vividly illustrates the deep divisions, the ideological struggles within the Iranian diaspora, where multiple, often conflicting visions for the future of Iran fiercely compete for influence, legitimacy, and the loyalty of the populace. It's a powerful demonstration of the multifaceted nature of opposition movements and their inherent internal conflicts, where the battle of ideas is as fierce as any other front.
Part 7. The ongoing struggle, present activities, and future aspirations. So after all these twists and turns, the harrowing experiences forging this new political vision, what does Amir Abbas Fakhravar's life look like today? Well, he remains based in Washington, D.C., continuing his dedicated work as the president of the National Iranian Congress, and maintaining his role as a lecturer in constitutional law at the Institute for Global Policy, the IWP.
Right. His continued leadership role within the constitutional movement, his sustained academic contributions, they clearly underscore his unwavering commitment to his long-term goals for Iran. He consistently works to build both political and intellectual credibility for his vision in exile, demonstrating a sustained effort to shape the discourse and lay groundwork for a future Iran, even from afar. His activities are really a testament to his persistent commitment to his cause. He's still very much in the fight.
His Instagram presence is also incredibly active. 2 million followers, that's significant reach. He continues to post prolifically about what he defines as the West's spiritual war against Marxism and Islamism. That's his framing. He also reiterates his continued vocal support for figures like former President Trump, famously stating Trump called the TDS syndrome of communists, using that specific term. And notably, he consistently makes predictions, often very specific, like Israel's attack on Iran is imminent. He keeps putting that out there.
Yeah, that ideological framework, positioning the struggle for Iran as part of this broader global spiritual war against what he perceives as the twin threats of Marxism and Islamism. It's a key part of his message. This grand narrative allows him to connect his specific cause to a larger global ideological conflict. And it clearly resonates with certain segments of Western audiences, solidifying his political brand, particularly when he aligns himself with conservative Western political figures. What's fascinating here is his ability to articulate a broad ideological conflict that appeals to a specific political spectrum, creating a sense of shared purpose. His consistent prediction of an imminent Israeli attack on Iran also serves a strategic role, doesn't it? It raises that important question: what psychological and political role do such consistent, high-stakes predictions play in shaping expectations, maybe galvanizing support for a political agenda, maintaining a pervasive sense of urgency among his followers and an international audience? They tap into existing geopolitical anxieties and strategically position him as this knowledgeable observer of high-stakes events, constantly keeping his audience engaged, perhaps on edge.
And finally, he concludes his narrative, or at least a major theme of it, with this deeply personal, powerfully symbolic pledge, one that ties his own destiny directly to Iran's future leadership. He states, "If Reza Shah's grandson does not have courage, I will fulfill my great-uncle's dream." That is quite a profound statement, isn't it? Laden with historical weight and, well, personal ambition.
It absolutely is. A profound statement of personal ambition and a deeply felt sense of historical responsibility. By evoking Reza Shah's legacy and explicitly contrasting himself with the Shah's grandson, a clear reference to the monarchist opposition, represented by Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi Fakhravar, positions himself as a direct and perhaps in his view more courageous inheritor of that pre-revolutionary patriotic legacy. He is effectively saying he's willing to step into a leadership vacuum if he perceives others aren't bold or courageous enough to lead. This self-positioning solidifies his self-perception as a torchbearer for Iran's future. A leader is ready to take the reins should the opportunity arise or necessity demand. His continued advocacy in videos where he states, "We in the intellectual movement will not allow Khamenei to hand over the flag to the next leader," and his constant promotion of the powerful #SayIse as a constitutional revolution hashtag, it consistently brings it back to the core mission of the NIC and his vision for a constitutional revolution. Placing this in the bigger picture, it emphasizes the ongoing intellectual and political battle for Iran's future beyond the current leadership, underscoring the vital role of individuals in shaping national destiny and preventing any form of dynastic succession, whether theocratic or monarchical. Which leaves us with a final, maybe provocative thought for you, the listener. In a world grappling with authoritarianism and competing visions for the future, how do individuals like Fakhravar continue to inspire and challenge narratives, even from afar? And what unique blend of pragmatism, conviction, and strategic alliances will ultimately stand the test of time in shaping a nation's destiny?
Okay, wow. That was truly a deep dive into a life defined by resistance, profound controversy, and an incredibly compelling, detailed vision for change. We've meticulously traced Amir Abbas Fakhravar's path, haven't we? From a defiant teenager enduring white torture in revolutionary Iran to a vocal, influential figure operating from exile, passionately advocating for a constitutional future. It's a complex story, rich with passion, conviction, undeniable impact. And it certainly gives us an immense amount to reflect on.
Indeed it does. Fakhravar's story is a powerful testament to the enduring force of individual conviction and the ongoing multifaceted struggle for diverse political futures in Iran. It challenges us, I think, to critically consider the many layers of opposition, the often high-stakes choices individuals make, and the varied paths they choose in their relentless fight for what they believe is right for their nation.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Amir Abbas Fakhravar's extraordinary and, yes, controversial story. Dear friends and companions, don't forget to follow me on Instagram and subscribe to me on YouTube and ring that bell and also become a member of my Telegram channel, which I wrote my pitch ID in the caption and description and in all videos at the bottom corner. Follow us so that I can present the best story to you.